Hello and welcome to the Gabba for Willow Talk Extras, wrapping up a very soggy day one of the third test. Izzy Westbury here with Haddin and Callum Ferguson. A score summary. Well, 13.2 overs were bowled on day one. Not for lack of trying. Australia are 0 for 28 until the heavens opened. I think we had one or two rain delays anyway. They were back on and back off. But it is stumps, 28 on the board, none down, which means that the two openers, Usman Khawaja is on 19 not out and Nathan McSweeney on 4 not out. Continuing things from the end of the last test almost. India won the toss, as they have done, I think, for the last 3 matches now, 3 in a row. First 2 matches they decided to bat. This time they decided to bowl. Hads, good toss to lose from Pat Cummins.
Yeah, I think it's a very good toss to lose. It's just one surface up here where you can be sucked in to thinking that you need to bowl first. But I still stand by, you think about bowling, then you bat first. And I wouldn't have actually looked at the surface today when the toss come down. I would have looked up. And when the toss was a bit humid, you can understand why India decided to bowl, thinking the ball would swing around. But it does put a lot of pressure on their bowlers. And we've seen today they probably didn't hit the lengths that they hit in Perth. They were a bit wide and short, allowed the Aussies to get through that initial spell from Bumrah. So, yeah, I was understand why they did bowl, but I wouldn't have bowled first today.
It's really interesting, wasn't it? Again, it's always a divisive toss when you talk to the experts leading in, when it is gloomy like this, because it is, as had said, a ground that traditionally has been a bat first wicket, but it was enticing, no doubt, and it enticed Rohit Sharma. Again, Hads is bang on the money. India just didn't hit the lengths and the lines that they needed to, and the same thing happened in the first innings in Adelaide with the pink ball. They had an opportunity in the evening to have a crack at the Australians. They only managed 1 for 86. The Australians did a fantastic job with Marnus and McSweeney both making it through the night. So again, another opportunity here in what were friendly conditions for bowlers at the very start. The Australians did a wonderful job, but conversely, the Indians missed their line and length, didn't ask the Australians to drive down the ground as much as they would be sitting in the sheds now thinking they needed to.
It almost feels like one of those scorecards that looks pretty, like a lot of dot balls, nice tidy figures for the bowlers, but no real venom or inroads. And actually, both the openers, McSweeney, I think he almost proved himself in that last test. Khawaja's been struggling a little bit more. He's had a few low scores. I'm trying to think. He's 8 for 13 and 9 not out leading into this match. He's now on 19 not out, so his highest of the series so far. He looked good. Do you think so, Hans?
Yeah, I thought he did. I thought the one thing he looked really sharp today is he looked to score. He didn't look like, to me, he was just looking to survive and get through Bumrah. He was looking to put the pressure back on the bowlers. He picked up length really quick today. He hit a couple of really nice pull shots that got him away. Interesting thing, I don't think Aussie's under pressure. I don't think there's much behind at the moment putting enough pressure on him with runs. But just having a look at, he's gone out majority of his career with David Warner opening. And when you go out with someone with David Warner's style, you get forgotten about at the other end. Everyone's concentrating on, we've got to tie David Warner out. We've got to get him early because the game moves so quick. And you can forget about who's at the other end. And a bit the same when Steve Smith opened. All the talk was about Steve Smith opening the batting. So the big focus was, well, the world's best batsman's gone up to number 1, and you forget about who's at the other end. And in this series, it's been about, okay, we've got to get Usman out. We've got a young opener at the other end. That'll take care of itself. But the focus has been more on him to do the scoring and get the game moving forward. He's done that well today, but it's been a different mindset, I think, about how he approaches his cricket opening the batting.
Cal, we've got 2 men out in the middle that I'm sure that Brisbane and Queensland would call their own. Nathan McSweeney, of course, returning to Queensland, and Khawaja, his sort of adopted homeland. In this series so far, we've had a bit of a theme. Mitch Marsh, he played well in Perth, got 47 in the end with the bat. Of course, Travis Head on his home ground at the Adelaide Oval made a century. Do you think this the reassurance of coming back to a home ground of sorts is Is what'll do it for Khawaja? We got 3 figures on the cards.
Well, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but what we have liked is the intent, and certainly I thought the way Nathan McSweeney batted once he got set in Adelaide was very good as well, showed good intent to score off both the front foot and the back foot, and I think with the extra bounce here at the Gabba, it'll suit both players. They both like to pounce on anything back of a length with a lack of venom on it, and Nathan probably didn't get the opportunities to bring the pull shot into the game that maybe Uzi did, but I certainly thought he was very assured in defence. They both played really late, which is really important here at the Gabba, day one, morning one, because it does just tennis ball a little bit here. It's not easy to drive down the ground, which is probably the opportunity that the Indian bowlers missed, but also the Australians played it really well. I think they like these conditions. Leaving on length is also a skill and an art. These two do it very nicely.
The one thing that's changed from the first test to now is there was a lot of talk about how you get through Bumrah. Oh, we've got to get through Bumrah, we've got to get through Bumrah. But there's never any talk about how do we score off Bumrah. And I think that's what's changed in the last 2 test matches is they've found a way to score and get off strike. I thought the big turning point for Australia was in Adelaide when McSweeney and Marnus had to get through that uncomfortable spell with the pink ball just before stumps. The ball was doing a lot, but they didn't just try to survive. Okay, we've got to get through 6 overs. We don't care what the score is. No, they looked to score on every opportunity. They were really aggressive in their feet to leave and judge the length really well, but their mindset was to score runs and not to survive. And that all of a sudden then puts a lot of pressure back on Bumrah. And we're seeing they got 20 overs into him in the Adelaide Test match. He came up a bit sore. There was a cloud over him coming into this Test match. So the more they can look to score, don't give him opportunities just to build dot ball pressures and not look to have any intent. So I think they've found a way to be really proactive against him, and it's working.
On that home ground advantage, is it worth more in Australia? And I ask this because coming from sort of international perspective, and I've sat through enough dinners and rain breaks to know that the Victorians don't like the ones from New South Wales, and the Western Australians have a chip on their shoulder here, and the Queenslanders have it over X, Y, Z. It's very parochial. You know, there's a real sense of making somebody your own. Is that more so in Australia than in other places, playing at your home ground?
I'm not too sure. I think certainly the fans let the local boys know how loved they are when they're playing in front of their home fans. There's no doubt about that. But I certainly, you do get the sense in England, the county players are really, it's a bit similar that way. You'd think in the West Indies, when you go to the different islands. So I think it's a real cricket thing, to be honest. And I certainly love the way that it's done here in Australia. Hads might be able to speak to India, but certainly when I've been over there, when you're in MS Dhoni's hometown, oh boy, you know about it.
Yeah, you all love your own. And I know we've got a live audience here today, and there's a lot of New South Welshmen in, and there's still not a truer word spoken in the world of cricket. You get your baggy blue cap, and your baggy green comes with it.
Not nowadays, I'm hearing. Anyway.
The tide's turned on that one, I think. But
India did bring in 2 changes. So Jadeja, or I should say that Australia had a change. Josh Hazlewood fit again, back in for Scott Boland, which is, it's a tough one because Boland did absolutely nothing wrong, but it seemed that was always going to happen. Jadeja in for Ashwin. Akashdeep in for Harshit Rawat. We've seen a bit of Akashdeep bowling. He bowled well with figures of 2 runs off his overs so far. Do these changes make sense? I mean, to me, they do. Jadeja is best all-rounder, one of the best all-rounders in the world, I'd say.
Well, it's an interesting selection. We all thought Jadeja would be in from Test 1. So for the 3 tests, they've chosen 3 different spinners. Washington Sundar, Ashwin's played, and now Jadeja. So to me, India aren't quite sure on how they want to use their spinner. Do they want to use him as a holding pattern just to tie up an end and allow the fast bowlers just to roll from one end? Do they want an attacking option? So they've had 3 tests and 3 different options. So to me, they're a bit confused on what role they want their spinner to play, which from someone from a country that understands spin better than anyone, it's surprising that they haven't got a clear plan on what they want to do.
I was really surprised as well Jadeja didn't start. I understood the Ashwin decision in Adelaide. He does have a good record in Adelaide. But certainly I thought Jadeja would have been the go-to. Averaged over 40 with the bat last tour to Australia as well. So he's got form over here with the bat in particular. I think it makes sense to our right-handers in particular. Obviously, with Warner out, McSweeney in. That's an extra right-hander as well, and Smith, dropping down as well. The Australians have got an extra right-hander in the lineup than what they'd had prior to David Warner's retirement. So the left arm orthodox, I like that selection against this Australian lineup.
Interesting point you raised there, Hads, on India knowing spin better than anyone. Do you think that's not the case any longer? Because I look at the New Zealand series, and especially with India's batting, in terms of playing spin, they were all over the place. And perhaps there's almost like this historical legacy that we think, and maybe India's players think, that they do know spin more than anyone, better than anyone. But actually, that's no longer the case.
Yeah, the modern day Indian batter, I don't think plays spin as well as the past. But there's a lot of ways to look at that as well, because when you first toured India, the wickets were flat for 3 days. Then they started to turn big on days.
So we're looking at the 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, and now when you go over there, they're prepared wickets that spin from ball one. So it takes a bit of luck to get through. But just going back to that selection, I think what's confused them with that number 7 spot is Reddy, actually.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Because if you look at him, he's batted okay. He's got a couple of 30s and 40s, and he bowls some handy and medium pace. But if Jadeja's in the team, you don't need Reddy, and you can play the 4th quick. So if you're going to make the decision to bowl here today, why could you leave Reddy out and play the 4th quick? And maybe use Bumrah instead of bowling 6 overs up front, you use him in short, sharp spells, because he was down on pace today. So that's an interesting, probably a different way to look at where they're at the moment.
Well, he's almost sort of set the cat among the pigeons, because he was picked as a bowling all-rounder, but he's been most effective as a batting all-rounder. He's top scored in 3 of the 4 India innings. So I think, in a way, they couldn't drop him because of his batting, but actually they need him as his bowling, and therefore you have this problem of deciding whether to bring a spinner in and which spinner to bring him in.
It comes down to making tough decisions, and that would have been a really tough call, and they must be really confident in Bumrah getting through this test match. They must feel like he's no problem whatsoever, because I think it's a fantastic call from Hads there. That 4th quick, genuine quick, would have been really helpful.
Okay, gentlemen, enough about all the trivial things that happen out there. What we really want to know is, we've been sitting here for the best part of 6 or 7 hours watching the rain, the deluge. It really had covered the outfield. You could sail a little dinghy across it at one point. Cal, what goes on during a rain delay? What do you get up to?
Well, there's a lot of rubbish talk, I'll tell you.
Cool.
There is just copious amounts of dross dribbled out the back there.
Even more than usual.
There's a real group of dribblers out the back there. But I'll tell you what I did notice, because we're all interested in what people get up to, right? Good question. I walked past Lord Baron Botham of Ravensworth in the county of North Yorkshire earlier, and he was on Wordle, trying to hold himself back from the Cricketers Club over there and finding his way over to the taps. So he found that the best way forward was for him to just bury himself in Wordle.
That's one way to do it. Hads?
I think it's changed a lot. I think when you first started that, everyone would have left the change room and gone down to the tab at the SCG. Others sit there and play cards. We've seen commentators sleep under the table to get through. So I'd imagine in the change room at the moment there'd be a lot of fast bowlers eating toasted sandwiches.
Oh, yeah. And Marnus.
And trying to avoid Marnus.
Fair enough. I sort of encapsulate it normally in sort of, people eat more food, drink more, whatever, and then just horses. And I'm not talking about the kind of Darryl Braithwaite horses. You know horses.
I didn't know if we were heading that way, but I must admit that Dan Ganane and I were just having a little look at the horses up there on the screen, which has been switched over. So we've had a little look at some of them.
Okay. Poor Marnus, avoiding Marnus in the changing room seems to be a thing to try and do in these days. Carl, who was the best and the worst teammate for you during a rain delay?
Well, during my time in the Australian cricket team, Doug the Rug Bollinger was just one of the great pests. He was just, I love Doug, and I went to the academy with him and roomed with him, but my goodness gracious me, there's a fair bit of Marnus about him with the way he buzzed around. He'd never sit still.
Do you think every team has a Marnus figure?
Yep.
I think so.
Who was yours, Hads?
I tell you, ours was David Warner, but he was the best and the worst.
Okay, explain.
So he would get bored really quick, so he'd come up with ways to annoy everyone, normally the bowlers. And, but he also, if you had a rain delay like this, he'd also be the best to organise something if we're finishing early, that whether they're going on the golf course, a restaurant, a good drink. So he's the best and worst in these situations.
Social Secretary
Very
David
good.
Warner.
Yeah, he was very good at that.
Not something I would have imagined. So there you go. You heard it here first on Willow Talk Extras, which means that we're now sliding into the final segment of the show, the Secret Cricket Club questions. And there's a few good ones if I can find my cue sheet. Lewis asks, oh, this is a good one. Are the Aussies slowly working out Jasprit Bumrah?
Oh, it's a good question. I think, as you get into a series, you're getting another look at the bowlers, and, it can go one way or the other on you. I think particularly here today, I think the Aussies, yes, they've gotten themselves a start, 13 overs in. Bumrah's bowled his 6 overs, and they've negotiated that. But I think, to be honest, it hasn't swung. The ball hasn't swung as much as it has throughout the series so far. So that's then, made it a simpler proposition for the Australian openers. So the wickets, obviously, Had's talked earlier about look up, not down. The wicket's good. The wicket's a very good wicket, and it's not swinging too much. So it's much simpler at the moment.
I think 100% they have, actually. In the first test, it was all about just getting through, just get through his spell. And
That's what you alluded to earlier. Yeah.
We spoke about that before. But now that they're looking to find ways to score.
Yeah.
And so they've had a couple of test matches to realise if he overpitched, I'm confident to hit him down the ground. He's going to try to get me bowled an LB. So I'm going to give up getting caught maybe behind, but I'm not going to let him hit my front pad or bowl me. So I think they have found out a way to get through Bumrah. I'd actually like to see him bowl more bounces. I think what he's trying to do is hit the pads or the stumps, but they're confident to get him on the front foot now. So why don't you use your bouncer, try to push the Australians back, and maybe then you can bring the stumps back into play.
Really good point. He used it quite well in Perth.
Yeah, he did.
Didn't he? And we found the Australians were sitting back a little bit more. Maybe that's the missing cog for him.
I wonder whether an issue there is that, the exertion, the physical exertion that's required to bowl bounces, he's trying to be all things to all men because he's not quite getting the support from the rest of that bowling attack, which means, I'm not trying to put myself in his head, but perhaps, he's trying to bowl that good top of off, but then also the bounce of barrage. It's a lot to ask of one man.
Yeah.
Interesting question, tricky times, but certainly the Australian openers out there are finding a way, as Haz was saying. Tom asks, what do commentators do during a rain break? I think we've answered that one.
Yeah, we've worked extremely hard to come up with good content for you.
Yes, that's it.
That's it.
Well, we're basically
hard at work.
Basically writing notes for this podcast.
Yep.
What we spent the last 7 hours doing, obviously. Adam asks, and I think this might explain to those that are watching this on YouTube why Hads has got this wonderful get-up, nice looking tie, tucked in the right places.
Looking $1 million.
Absolutely, as he always does. Anyway,
that's
of course. Just $1 million more here.
Just doesn't got the trucker's cap today.
Adam asks, where has Hads been? Is he too big for Willow Talk now he's on the telly?
That's an interesting.
You were absent for the last podcast, weren't you?
That's an interesting question from Adam. I wonder if Adam's telling that from the soccer studio, the tennis studio, or the rugby league one. So, good question, Adam, you dill.
I reckon Hads has worked out who Adam is. What do you reckon?
It's all right, we roped him back in, but I tell you what, it cost a bit. Sood asks, will it be a favourable pitch for spinners after the rain?
I think this is going to turn. I would have tried a spin very early on today. It was a bit softer. And I know Nathan Lyon, he enjoys bowling. Shane Warne's got a great record here also. But in the first session, you should try a spinner because it's not as hard as it is in day 2 and 3. So the ball does grip. So I would be, yes, the answer is yes, the ball will turn.
And the bounce here is really important for spinners as well. That's something that spinners that have played well here previously have used really well.
Washington Sundar, it's interesting that he's not.
Yeah.
Jadeja will make use of that. I must say, every ground that I go to, someone will say, oh yeah, Lyon's got a really good record here. And it turns out that Lyon has a really good record everywhere. But, great. And also, there's a lot of speculation leading into this test after the very short finishes that we've had so far about 5-day cricket, whether it should be that any longer. But, it might well be that going forward, the only 5-day cricket we get is 3 rain delays. So what an opportunity. I'm looking forward to that if and when it does arise. Paul asks, I saw that Ricky Ponting is now, goodness me, a doctor of philosophy. What would Cal and Hads be doctors of? What's your speciality, chaps?
Gee whiz.
Well, I think that silence, that deathly silence answers it.
I think that says enough.
Just trying to go. I think Mark Taylor's a doctor.
What would Mark Taylor be a
Toby,
doctor
are
of?
you a doctor of something? Have you got an honorary doctorate?
A science doctorate.
Science.
Ooh.
Jeez, I hope it's not research.
Wow.
Well, we'll have to get it. Well, I'm sure next episode,
Get
I'm
him
sure
on.
we can come and explain his
Talk through
speciality.
that one.
Talk us through his doctorate there. So no answer to that one, but we'll think about it and come back to you. Walshmo asks, how often does Cal need to shave to be clean shaven? Oh, ouch! Cutting.
That's an interesting one. It has to be. It's almost daily. It grows quite quickly. My dad has a wonderful John Newcomb style chopper tash, which I think it just grows quickly in my family. Although I do get a bit of a baby face when I shave, which I think he's trying to clip me with, but
A cherubic
has to
baby
happen
face. There
has
you
to
go.
happen regularly.
And the final one, I think it's sort of only right to end on it after this very rain-sodden day. Andrew asks, Test cricket at Marvel Stadium? ?
Oh.
No.
I think we would need to put significant time and effort into that wicket block.
Yeah, you never say never, but I don't think it would stand up. You know what? I could be a doctor of common sense.
Oh, even if you say so yourself.
Cricket analysis.
Okay, expand. You can't just leave it at
Best
that.
in the business, B. Haddin.
It was a good live show today. The crowd was good. A lot
Oh,
of
there
New
we go.
South Welshmen in the crowd, which is good.
Modesty, your middle name, yeah, Hads. A doctor of common sense, so you've got the one answer. Well, it really has been. It's been, I guess, a frustrating day, but also inevitable in a way. It's rained a lot. Day one of the test here at the Gabba. We might well get a 5-day test. I'm much looking forward to commentating on a bit more cricket. But that's goodbye for us for the time being at Willow Talk Extras. I'm Izzy Westbury, Brad Haddin, Callum Ferguson. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is he?
Yeah, thanks for watching the Willow Talk podcast on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't have to miss an episode wherever you are. And while you're at it, check out these videos up here. They're mostly good.